Hi dear friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is me Chico Hermosa. So today I'm with one of the eminent professor in sociology, Prof.Avijit Pathak is with us. So Professor Pathak is a teacher from the Department of Sociology, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So welcome to my channel, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Science is a vast discipline. So when your time you have decided to choose sociology as your field of research. So what was the striking features or what was the fact behind to yes, I will choose sociology as my area of research, particularly in education. What was the factor or the motivation behind?
Some kind of inherent curiosity and inherent interest uh, uh, in the way people live, in culture, the symbolism of culture, in human practices, So there was a deep interest in that, and that interest, when we were growing up, was not just merely technical academic interest. So there was an interest in the larger domain of culture and society, say cinema, music, art. So those were the domains of interest. So as a result, we felt that possibly sociology is a kind of subject that would sensitize me, that would enable me to understand the dynamics of human life, man's location in the larger social structure in the history, and also enable me to make sense of many things, its politics, its cultural institutions, its conflict in the society, its symbolism, its art. So these were the broad, wide interests that took me to the discipline, and that's why, for example, my journey with the discipline began. But once again, as I grow up with the discipline, and I feel that boundaries of disciplines are not like boundaries of India and Pakistan, boundaries of nation state. I think that as you grow up, disciplines often merge. And what is important, of course, is to have your base in the traditions of your discipline, but not to be limited to that, not to be bounded by that, to expand. So it's like saying that, I'll just give an illustration. If I teach my students Emile Durkheim's work on suicide, they must read that text with all rigor and thoroughly. But I also believe, as a teacher, it is equally important on my part to tell the students that when you read Emile Durkheim's suicide, also read Albert Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus or The Rebel. Read Dostoevsky's novels and the literature, and try to understand how great literary figures, the novelists, reflected on the issue of pain, suffering, suicide, issues of that kind. Idea is to become sensitive to the phenomenon called suicide. The idea is not just to mechanically, like a parrot, repeat what Durkheim has said. I believe that's why it is very important to be flexible. And that's why I feel that, and I always tell myself and tell students, the more beautifully you do sociology, the more creatively you engage with poetry, with cinema, with aesthetics, with literature. That would not belittle your sociology. In fact, that would enrich your sociology. That would make you much more sensitive, creative, imaginative. That is the way I see the discipline.
Parents have the money, power, or the wealth, then they can send their students to abroad or a good university. At the same time, there are people, they are in the below poverty level, they can't afford such kind of fees, right? So that means that it's kind of inequality. Whoever has the money, power, they can give a better education. So in that circumstance, how this meaningful education or how it will be how we can take that process in
Okay. I think I'm happy that you have asked this question, and this question is immensely relevant. And there are, as I understand, there are three components of it. The first component is about India's heterogeneity, diversity, not only in terms of religion, ethnicity, culture, but also it's a society which is a highly stratified and unequal society, and the division between the rich and the poor is immense. So in a society of this kind, the first part of your question is that how public funded universities, say university like JNU, the role it can play to invite, to inspire, to bring students coming from, say, economically marginalized, socially, culturally marginalized sections of society. And I believe that despite many limitations, some of our public universities were trying to do that. And I think one distinctive feature of JNU particularly as a public university, that it was trying to reconcile high quality education and the accessibility. And that's why as a teacher I have always felt that teaching at JNU is a great pedagogic challenge, and as a teacher you evolve. Because when you come to the classroom, in the same bench you see a student, say from LSR or Stephens, metropolitan English speaking, another student from a remote village of Arunachal Pradesh, another Dalit student from Maharashtra, another struggling woman from Bihar. So you see that heterogeneity. And JNU transformed people's life at its golden stage and golden period. But today, in the age of market, in the age of neoliberalism, and you know it better than me, we have been seeing an organized attack on public universities. And that's why if the public universities decline, universities like JNU, DU, institutes like that, then I think that education would further reproduce the existing hierarchy and inequality. So it's like saying that, for example, if you get a good quality education, say MA in economics or MSc in physics from a university like JNU and DU with a rate which is affordable, and why should you go to a costly, fancy private university which demands a huge amount of money? So what we are seeing today, there is a very organized attempt at destroying the public universities. And I feel that it would be severe blow to India's quest for an egalitarian society if we go on demolishing the public institution and celebrate the privatization of education. That, I believe, is the first component. And second component, I think that your question is about, the coaching centers. And I see that it's cancer. It is, if there is something called black economy in India, there is something called black education. And I have no hesitation in saying that Kota, that notorious town in Rajasthan, known for all branded fancy coaching centers, and throughout the country every year a lot of children go there. And Kota has many underground stories of depression, stories of suicide, stories of anxiety. And what you are saying, that it represents everything that is black about our education. Why does it happen? Because our schools, barring exception, have become merely certificate distributing legitimate agencies, because schools should give you certificate, but there is no meaningful, substantial learning in school taking place. And that's why the mushrooming growth of coaching center. And second, when your education becomes primarily exam-centric, qualitative learning, meaningful learning, we give no importance to it. And that too in the age of multiple choice questions, then you transform a student into some kind of a hyper-competitive consumer of knowledge capsules. So for many youngsters today, physics is not the physics of Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Physics is FITG physics, the physics that FITG as a coaching center would teach to crack the IIT entrance test. History is not the history of Romila Thapar or Eric Hobsbawm. History is the history that IS coaching, Rao's IS coaching circuit would teach for preparing you for the IS exam. So in a world of this kind, MCQ pattern of competitive exams, declining standard of formal educational institutions, and reducing education into a very knowledge capsules, discrete knowledge capsule, rather than going into depth and transforming young learner into an exam warrior. That has led to the mushrooming growth of coaching centers, and that has killed the spirit of education. I would just tell you, sometimes I feel very sad when I see some youngsters, and sometimes I ask that possibly in their life they have never come across a great pedagogue and great teacher. They have found some boring school teachers who just complete the syllabus and take the exam, and they have found some coaching center teachers who give them the knowledge capsule to succeed in entrance test. But the kind of teacher that Tagore or Krishnamurti or Paulo Freire would have imagined, these teachers they have never found. And that's a great crisis in education. And I believe young educationists, youngsters like you, should create an awareness of that. Let education be celebrated as a critical awareness, as a sensitivity to life, as empathy, And as T.S. Eliot said, that where is the knowledge we have lost amid information, and where is the wisdom we have lost amid knowledge, So that's something we ought to think about and reflect on.
Sir, once I was reading about something about education. Then I found this quote: "Education is it's an understanding of human emotions." But when you look at the reality, there are a lot of people who received PhD, PDF from different prestigious university. But when they are achieving such kind of good values about from the different disciplines, but when it's come to the reality, they are not applying such kind of things. But an uneducated person, he used to behave in a good way. So it was the striking feature in my mind. So somebody have the good knowledge, so-called knowledge about the system and a lot of things. Somebody they don't have, they are not educated, but they used to behave, they used to understand the emotions of other people. So what do you think about this?
Response to your first question, when you asked me about the meaningful education, and I, in my own way, what I have experienced and what I believe in, explained it to you that a liberating, meaningful, emancipatory education is not what today is going on in the name of dominant mainstream education. So the dominant mainstream education transforms you into a hyper-competitive, egoistic, achievement-oriented, self-centric person. It is based on exams, grading, hierarchy, and mastery of certain kind of cognitive, technical, intellectual skills. But it hardly sensitizes us, the kind of sensitivity that you are talking about. I tend to believe that no matter whether I am an engineer, I am a doctor, I am a professor of medieval history, or I am a professor of physics, irrespective of that, irrespective of my academic, technical, cognitive specialization, there is something more that education, liberating education ought to do. And that something more is the cultivation of three faculties, which I believe. One is the empathy. Empathy is not sympathy, but empathy is the ability to imagine oneself in the position of the other. Say, for example, as someone born in a Hindu family, I might not have experienced the agony of being a Muslim in today's India, the being a minority in today's India. But only if my education succeeds or tries its best to expand my power of empathy, then possibly I would try my best to imagine myself in the position of a Muslim. And then possibly I would understand that what kind of a trauma and pain they are passing through at a time when the majoritarian Hindutva nationalism has become the dominant discourse. So it would make me sensitive, it would make me dialogic, it would make me reflexive. The second component which I believe the meaningful education, apart from your professionalization, ought to do is reflexivity. By reflexivity, I believe that you build a bridge between the self and the world. It is not like that you just mastered the world, know the world. In the process of knowing the outer reality, you also try to know yourself. So it's like saying, I ask my sociology students that when you study patriarchy or the caste or consumerism, then it is not that patriarchy, caste and consumerism is only an outer thing that you have to objectify and write your thesis. Do that. But also in that process of studying patriarchy and caste, ask yourself whether there is certain kind of patriarchal notion of being a man and woman already has corrupted you. What do you do about yourself? And you are studying caste in a Gorakhpur village, but whether there is certain kind of caste hierarchy you yourself have internalized in your life practice. So I believe that question reflexivity can bring about. So reflexivity is something that seeks to build a bridge between the objective and the subjective, between the personal and the collective, between the personal and the social history, between the self and the world. And that, I believe, ought to be a very important component of meaningful education. And the third, very important, is the ethics of care. Ethics of care, I mean, knowledge is not just the power to objectify the world. Knowledge is not just the power to establish one's domination over others. But can we reimagine knowledge, rethink knowledge, knowledge as relatedness, knowledge as love, knowledge as care. Today you see that technoscience is the language of power. The power to objectify nature, reduce nature into a resource, and to establish human supremacy over others. Or even some of our expertized knowledge. Also, it is the knowledge that you make a distinction between your expertized knowledge and people. And as an expertized knowledge, you establish your surveillance network over others. But when we question that and we think that let's reimagine knowledge as love, as care. I know the world in order to heal the world. And today, at the time of the climate crisis, at the time of the pandemic, at the time of such wide disparity in the world, the knowledge that schools, colleges and universities ought to nurture is the knowledge that seeks to heal the world. We are already living in a world with such violence, with such inequality, and so much of a violence in our life. If there is anything that the world is crying for, that is the human touch, love, ethics of care, and education ought to cultivate that. So your question, you could see many experts, specialists, people with doctorate, PhDs, postdoc, they don't have that sensitivity. They don't have that empathy. They're arrogant, they're snobbish, they're self-centric. And that's why, isn't it the irony that who are running the corrupt enterprise today? All these university educated people, who are doing all those software hacking, all this surveillance technology and all those computer scientists who are making bombs, all those university PhDs, So it has got nothing to do your sensitivity, because the kind of education that I have emphasized that creates only a self-centric, careerist, egoistic, technical person. It doesn't create a good human being. It is never the goal of the dominant mainstream education. And that's why you see that it is happening. In the Holocaust project, many minds from the best universities of Germany, economists, scientists, technicians were involved in that project of mass killing. They are the product, they are the gold medalists. They are the product of the university system. So that's why I think it's high time we we could.
When I'm like roaming in the campus, I meet a lot of students from sociology department and other disciplines also. So they were like always talk about sir, Avijit sir. So if I like if I ask their favorite teacher, who's your favorite teacher? Yes, they used to say like, okay, we interested in Avijit Pathak sir. So like from your perspective, who is your like teacher? I mean like, can you please explain
Okay.
memories about your teacher?
To explain it in this way, I tend to believe at this stage of life cycle, there are four kinds of teachers, I believe in everybody's life, but as I look at myself, let me speak of this four kind of teacher, and I'm a student of those teachers. The first is, which often comes to our mind when we talk about formal education, the professional teachers, your school teachers, your college teachers, your university teachers, your supervisor, who has taught you, who are part of the school society, school, colleges and university. So I think that I'm lucky to come across some of the brilliant teachers at school, colleges and universities. I was a student of a government school, and in our time, government schools were of a very good quality, And I am still in touch. One of my school teacher, who is quite old, who used to teach us mathematics, and used to teach us very beautifully. And one of the important thing about his teaching, suppose 4 days he taught mathematics, 5th day he says, today I'll tell you a story. And he would say, tell a story, some very beautifully a historic story about the freedom struggle. So I could see that how a mathematics teacher with such sensibility. There was another teacher who one day told us that when you people would grow up, we were a student of class 9, you should know about Immanuel Kant, great philosopher. So he just, by making that point, he just wanted to broaden our horizon. Your education is not just physics, chemistry, mathematics and doing success in life. He just spoke of Immanuel Kant. Much later I realized that why he did it. So some of these teachers in the formal institutions. The second, I believe, is that your family, your friends, your relatives who may not be formal teachers. So I think that my elder brother, my mother, they and my father, they in a way were remarkable teachers in my life. Not because they taught me formal subjects, but possibly they helped me to evolve certain ways of looking at life, certain sensitivity to life. Because we grew up not with that notion that you have to become rich and you have to earn a huge amount of money. I remember we grew up with a belief which my parents and the elder brother would always tell us, that do what fulfills you, do what satisfies you, and lead an honest, meaningful, joyful life. Possibly today's generation would not believe it. How come your parents are not asking you to leave the country and become a citizen of United States? So they gave us something, and so they were remarkable teachers. And third, I believe, is that great philosophers who have inspired you. So it is in that sense, I would say, when Dostoevsky writes a novel, The Karamazov Brothers, Dostoevsky is my teacher. When Rabindranath Tagore writes his poetry, wrote powerful essays on nationalism, writes his novels, reflect on education, he is my teacher. Jiddu Krishnamurti as a wanderer is my teacher. Paulo Freire is my teacher. I have never met them, but their writings, their vibrations, and I feel that I'm walking with them, I'm trying to walk with them. So these are the third group of teachers. And fourth, and the most important, is life. Life is your teacher. And when I speak of life, that the rhythm of life and death, so every moment of it, it's like when you watch a sunset, and then suddenly you feel that sunset is as beautiful as sunrise. So when there is a sunrise, the activity began, the day began. We get ready, we get energetic, we come to the colleges, universities, offices, we walk. There is so much of physical, vital, intellectual energy. And when there is sunset, after the entire day's work, sun is setting. But in that sunset, there is a lot of grace in that sunset. Now it is the moment of darkness. It is the moment of withdrawing from the work. It is the moment of tranquility, rest. It is like returning into the mother's womb, darkness. It's like graceful death. Sunset is like graceful death, and sunrise is like a vibrant life. And both are equal part of existence. So the nature, that makes you humble, and the nature gives you a sense of infinite and the wonder. So it's like saying that each time you see the ocean, you are from Kerala, you see it much more frequently. You see it ocean, the experience of the infinite. And all these waves and the tides which are temporal, these are like our egos. They come, they touch the shore, disappear, but what remains is the infinity of the ocean. So mountain, when you look at the distant Himalayan peaks, you feel there is something higher about you. There is something higher and nobler than your CV, than your publications, than your salary. All those egoistic preoccupation in our life, you feel that there is something higher, nobler. For me, religiosity is that. For me, religiosity is not being a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, reading Gita, Bible, Quran. Religiosity is a quest for that transcendental infinite. That is something beyond your egoistic, limited, finite, embodied existence. And the nature takes you to that domain. And it is sad that today we live in such a denaturalized existence, and that's why I feel that the nature is your great tutor. These are the four kind of teachers.
Sir, you have mentioned about there are four teachers. I mean, like you are classifying the teachers, okay, which molded you to you as a sociologist, as a professor. So the last point was about the nature. So whenever for example, when I am walking from there to admin block to SAS, I have seen you are sitting in the outside the classroom and delivering the lecture. Sometimes I heard that, sir, you used to take students to the PSR rocks, and you are once I visited your home, you have given me dry fruits. So what is the beauty of these giving dry fruits, taking students out of the classrooms?
A very conscious intention or the conscious arch in it, but I believe that especially this campus is so beautiful. JNU is so beautiful, and we have still so much of natural abundance, trees, huge trees, open space. And I always believe that generally our formal classroom structure, professor's position, student's position, that I believe is very formalized and hierarchical. So I tend to feel that when we, in an open space, beneath a tree, or in an open park, you sit, and all of you sit together. That space is very liberating space, It expands your horizon, and the space is very non-hierarchical. And then the freshness of the air, the sun above you, the trees, the whisper of trees, everything, that, softens the consciousness, the mind. The mind becomes much more receptive, much more dialogic, and also in that, you and I, teacher and students, succeed in breaking their armor, artificial armor. the communication, I tend to feel, becomes much more living and authentic. So I have enjoyed thoroughly every moment of interaction with students in the open space. Convention Center lawn, Parthasarathi Rock, and even earlier, sometimes a lot of things used to happen walking with a group of students on the full moon, that entire road towards Central School, JNU Stadium, and all that walking. And then all of us coming together at Gangadhaba and having a cup of tea and discussing something. So I believe that there are many things very spontaneously you learn, even when you do not read the prescribed syllabus. The life, as I said, the life, its rhythm, the communication, and before the lockdown, I created a forum called the Useless Adda series, because in the age of market, all the time we talk about the use value, whether it has some utility and all that. So I created a forum with the student Useless Adda series. So where you and I talk freely, spontaneously. So I used to call a group of students, 7-8 students, to the JNU International Coffee House. And with a cup of coffee, we all used to talk something on education, on politics, on culture, in non-judgmental, non-hierarchical forum, where we would just talk with a cup of coffee. And there is no time limit. Sometimes it went on up to 3 hours, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 75 minutes. It was with its natural flow. So I enjoyed that, I celebrated that, and I feel that it's a great experience for me of learning and unlearning. And I tend to feel that students were also enthusiastic about this kind of an experimentation and the venture.
It's a personal question only. Okay. So tell me about the contribution which was, of course, you were talked about your parents as not a formal teacher, but like how they supported or helped you to mold as a professor, and look at your journey.
That I grew up in a huge family. We have many brothers and sisters, and my father was the only source of income as a government servant. So it is a middle class existence in a small town in Bengal. But as I told you that, and I was the youngest, and that possibly the reason, I never felt so much of a burden of taking the responsibility and all that. But what happened is that even for my all brothers and sisters, parents always supported education, and they always said that right now it is your education, right now you need not bother much about it. And for me, for example, when I was doing my master's, PhDs and others, always there was an encouragement from my parents that if you are enjoying your PhD, do it, don't divert yourself. You need not apply for jobs at this moment. You just complete it, do it. So there was that too much of a moral support I got. And I believe that was that assurance and faith. And the faith that, okay, possibly our son is doing what he loves to do and doing it honestly. So I got that positive vibrations from them. There was no doubt about my motive and all that. So that I think was remarkable, played a very important role. And second, I believe is that the needs were very minimal. Just to get fellowships, the hostel, and our needs were very minimal, so everything I could manage all those things, so that moral support I think was remarkable and tremendous. And another support I would say that which encouraged that I remember I was doing my MPhil, and I wrote an article on Eric Fromm in the Sunday magazine of Hindustan Times. And during that time that I got, because of writing that article, those days, mid-80s, I got 250 rupees from the Hindustan Times. So I bought a gift for my mother, and when I went home, I gave that gift to my mother, and told her that this gift has been taken, the money that I have earned after writing an article. I could see tears in my mother's eyes, and she told that this is special. She told me that this is special. People take up 9 to 5 job, earn lot of money, they spend and all that. That you also will do. But as a student, out of your own art and creative art, you have written somewhere, and through that you have earned something, and you have bought this gift. That has no parallel. And that gave me a lot of hope in creative pursuits. That creative pursuits have meaning, and there are people who could see the worth of creative pursuits. I think all these things help you in the process of growing up. So I'm eternally grateful to that I have found my parents who trusted me, and who gave me lot of hope, confidence at different time of turmoil and suffering in life. So I think that was the thing I would say.
So thank you so much, sir.
No, thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.